All right, we seem to be working for now. We'll see how much longer the stream is able to maintain itself, considering that apparently that little glitch that happened yesterday when Dustin and I were streaming was not due to like a Wi-Fi thing or a dual streaming thing. Apparently, the internet itself is having some major outage problems, but we're back for now. Another Monday recap for Talkin' Lost. Luke, good to see you again. After I think that was the first time ever yesterday when you told me that like, oh, can we actually push it to the next day? I'm like, really? I'm like, I'm always the one that does that. You never do this. So it must have been something really important. But we're here regardless. We're covering the next episode of Lost, Par Avion, which is a little bit of a continuation, but I would say more so just another kind of step in kind of the build that season 3 has been. I don't know. What did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I thought it was a banger on all the levels. As Claire finally did something. She hasn't done anything like the whole season. Like she had one flashback, she kind of a fake flashback, and now we've got another one. The goat lost character returns, guest starring John Terry. I'm like,
Yes.
yes, let's
Yes.
go.
The
And
go-to guy.
every parallel story has plot elements to it that moving the plot forward. No filler. We just keep developing those already existing, and of course a big sort of reveal at the very end, which
Yes.
a typical Lost
A
cliffhanger, if
typical
you
Lost
will.
cliffhanger, if there ever was one. Yeah, this was a fun one. It wasn't quite a filler, but it wasn't quite like I would say like a banger, but it was like
Yeah.
towing the line. It was like right in the middle. It was just perfect in that sense. You're right. This is our next Claire flashback, and even though it had already basically been told to us, this is the episode that confirms yes, Jack's dad is also Claire's dad. They are siblings. Her flashback takes place like many years. I think even before the events that she's revealed to be pregnant, which is where. So because it was funny because this was messing around with my mind a little bit in terms of what I remembered from the show. Cause I was like, wait a minute. I'm like John Terry. I'm like Christian Shephard was yelling at somebody in the Ana Lucia episode at the end of season 2. So, but that wasn't her mom. And then in this episode, it's revealed that, oh, the reason why, she has done the things that she's done in her life is because she got into this horrible car accident as a teen that put her mom in a permanent state of in a permanent vegetative state, unfortunately. And obviously, you have this very ominous thing with the doctor when he comes in and he's like, oh, I assure you the expenses have all been taken care of. And she's like, by who? And then as he walks in and it's like, oh, there's this other random doctor there, and then basically you see Christian there and I'm like, yes, it's once again, it's so crazy and ironic just how the parallels between Lost and real life, because again, Christian is not a good guy. He's a pretty terrible dad and he could never make it work with Jack. And so now here he is trying to make it work with Claire ultimately. And it's just, I feel like that alone, we can pick that apart for hours on end.
Yeah, again, it's with the daddy issue stuff, and then I'm more excited to see how when eventually they do find out that they are siblings. I'm sure that won't be for a little while, because it's like how would they even like acknowledge that? Like it would have to come up in some aspect. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, again with the flashback order, I'm sure someone has like painstakingly put every flashback in order, like somewhere on the internet. I'm sure we can find.
I don't know if you saw it. There's that one edit of it, like it shows the multiple different like sequences, but from different perspectives, all like at the same time. Like the Thanos snap, and it shows everybody disappearing from like all across the movies. They did the same thing, but with the Lost premiere. So it shows like the plane blowing up, but then it shows like Jack and Rose and all the people that are on the plane when the plane blows up. It shows Desmond like running to try and unblock the energy thing after he kills Clancy Brown in season 2, and then it shows the others coming out of their huts and seeing the plane explode everything, and it shows that all happening simultaneously. And I'm like, oh, this is why the internet exists here. And
yeah, I'm gonna have to see that after, but
yeah, I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. But yeah, we also have again, like that's just a flashback, but we also have a ton of other stuff happening on the island, because what's so interesting about this plot line is we have both the continuations of both the major plots, which are, again, the quest now to rescue Jack from the others, and Charlie dealing with this existential, like, oh, Desmond seeing the future, oh, I'm going to die thing. And those are kind of like our two main plots that have been set up so painstakingly throughout the course of that first half. And now we're seeing those, like, continue to pay off with the different characters, where on the one hand, you have Claire, who out of the blue comes up with this insane idea where, again, it's kind of funny how the show will occasionally remind you after all this crazy stuff that's happened on the island that, like, oh yeah, we aren't still trying to get rescued. And
yeah, it's like I watched it. I'm like, Yeah, we're 3 seasons in now. We
Yeah.
should be more actively trying to get off
Exactly.
the
It's
island.
the
So
thing.
so
I don't know. It's that weird thing of it's like when people get into this point of it's like they either accept their scenario or they're still defiant. But it's at that weird point where like the ones who've accepted it are like trying to paint the defiant ones as crazy, even though they're like, no, you're crazy for having accepted this crazy scenario as being normal. You should all be trying to be more like me and trying to get off the island. But so it basically Claire comes up with this insane idea to try and capture a seagull because seagulls are all tagged, and that way it'll get picked up by somebody when the seagulls fly because in either Australia or New Zealand. And basically Desmond is essentially trying to stop Claire from enacting this plan. And knowing what we know now, we know that it has something to do with him preventing Charlie from dying again. And then on the other side of the island, you have Kate, Sayid, and Locke continuing their trek across the island in order to try and find the others' barracks with Mikhail. And even there's some more crazy revelations that happen there in terms of, okay, we get the mention of the list. We get Mikhail almost telling them and just slipping last minute, be like, Ben's not the man in charge. He's not the one that brought us here. We get the electric barrier fence. Like, there's so much shit that we got in this episode that I forgot. Like, between last episode and this episode, I'm like, man, I forgot how much, like, crazy, like, island development, story lore, and all this different stuff they're throwing at us with season 3. I'm assuming that this is part of Lindelof and Cuse's attempts to, like, overcompensate for the fact of, okay, we spent all of last season in the hatch. Now, this season, we're going to throw new shit at you every episode. Because with the exception of Stranger in a Strange Land, we've kind of gotten that, since we've had this segment of, like, Kate and Sawyer coming back and rejoining with the main squad. So, well, again, I just dropped a lot of shit on you there. So, like, I don't know. What was your favorite development as far as new stuff that was added here?
Yeah, no, it is definitely moving at a brisker pace than even at the beginning of the season. Like, it was a bit slow establishing where everyone is. We got off the other island. Now they're going to get Jack. So everything's in motion, giving everyone a little something to do. And again, this cements Mikhail as like this perfect NPC video game type character where he's only there for exposition and like lore drops and he delivers them so perfectly.
Delivers them because I'm like, man, if you're gonna get somebody to do that, make him have an interesting ass accent. Like I said, every time that guy opens his mouth, where I'm like, I don't care what anybody else is saying, I am in on that. And then we get the fake out at the end of it's like, oh no, did Locke just kill him? He's not dead, by the way. But it's like, I'll say this, you could have convinced me otherwise, because like when they come across the fence and Locke shoves him through, and it's like, oh man. This is another tricky one because like I know what those fence barriers are for, but I know you don't. So I mean, obviously there's
maybe they're for the smoke monster.
There you go. See, I knew you were gonna.
There you go.
I knew you were gonna guess.
There's only so many things on the island.
It's great. I love it because it's like this is what pisses me off so much about spoiler culture is the fact that everyone's like, oh, don't spoil it, don't tell me anything. I'm like, if you have a brain and rationale and common sense, you can figure this shit out for yourself. Like this is not like something that like, oh, I'm like gonna tell you something that like immediately destroys the story lore or anything. Like half the shit that has happened so far on the island plot wise, you've been able to guess. So I'm like, if that's the case, then like.
And that's a testament to the writers, because a good plot twist, you should see it and then think about how the hell did I not see that coming.
Yeah, exactly. You should be.
If it's out of nowhere, that's
exactly.
If it's out of nowhere, that's bad.
It's funny because that also kind of ties in with the thing that's happening this season on Gen V. Which are you watching this season of Gen V?
I haven't started yet.
So there's a plot twist surrounding who they think the bad guy is, essentially, and basically what's established is that they basically tell you, without spoiling any plot details, they basically tell you what the bad guy's powers are, in the hope that you won't be able to figure out what the big plot twist reveal is about who the bad guy actually is. Basically, all that I'm going to say is that the bad guy has the ability to, like, control other people like a puppet master, essentially. And then there's this big reveal at the end of this most recent episode. And you had the creator coming out and being both simultaneously mad, but also praising the genius of the fans, being like, oh, I'm so mad that they figured it out, but it's awesome that they did. And it's like, motherfucker, you told us basically what that was going to be like 3-4 episodes ago. You were just waiting for us now to figure it out. Like, it was pretty obvious what it was going to be. Also, the fact that they had a pretty massive cameo in the first episode that they were deliberately waiting and saving until the last bit. For anybody who's seen Wicked recently, you'll know who I'm talking about. But essentially, yeah, it's kind of a similar instance here where it's like they have all these different like massive like lore things in there. Like I said, this goes all the way back to when he was designing the show with J.J. Abrams back at the beginning. All this different like lore and iconography, these various kind of set marks. Like I said, the giant foot that Sun, Sayid, and Jin boated past it. They were like, oh, what the hell is that?
That's still there.
Like that's still there. Like remember the black ship, the pirate ship is still sitting there. There's all these different lore bits and pieces. Yeah. That they've continued to find and unearth on this island, and it always comes with something new. And in this case, like I said, and it's just there. It's meant in this episode as for story purposes, just as another barrier for them to overcome. Ultimately, this massive electric fence, and then they're able to climb over it and discover the location of the barracks at the end. But and that obviously leads to the major ending there, with the reveal of Jack playing football with Tom and everything. And
He's
you're like,
fine.
oh, he's fine. Just playing football. Has he become like one of the others? And obviously, again, it gets all these clues gestating. But real quick, I want to focus back on what Mikhail was talking about when he almost revealed some insane lore to Kate there. Because I know that I've mentioned Jacob's name many, many times before. I think that Jacob's name has already been mentioned on the show, but I may have forgotten because, again, it's been a lot of episodes up until this point now. Because
I don't think it has, but
it may or may not.
There is allusion to a great man.
Yes, a great man. And as I've said, like I said, there is a messianic Jesus-esque figure that does live on the island that does not get introduced until much, much later on. That is who Mikhail is talking about, by the way. And also, again, tying in with the fact of the reveal that, Ben is not the guy in charge, essentially. Even though he's the leader of the others for this specific instance, but he is not the man in charge, the ruler of the island, the way that Kate and the others have assumed also. Another major couple things that come from this, the reveal of the lists, the idea of, your name wasn't on the list. This is also not the first time that we've heard lists mentioned. Also going back to the first episode, Ben telling Ethan and Goodwin when he sends them to the various different camps for the oceanic survivors to assemble lists of the manifest. So that's another important lore drop. Another bit that's important is when Locke shoves Mikhail through the gate and him and Sayid start arguing in an argument that it feels like he would have had with Jack throughout season 2, in the sense
he misses Jack. He needs that
he needs that conflict. He doesn't know how to function without it. Also, the fact that Mikhail almost reveals that Locke was paralyzed when it came to that. I'm like, another insane bit right there. Like, so again, you have all this lore being dropped right here. And
I will say Locke's been kind of like barreling through the island these last few episodes. He just blew up the whatever it's called, the blast station,
the flame,
the flame, and now he supposedly kills Mikhail out of nothing, and he's like, I'm sorry.
And this was the first instance where I realized, I'm like, is Locke letting like the power trip, now that Jack's out of his way, kind of get to his head? Or is he like, once again, is he back in like kind of season 1 mode where he's like just on this locked in mission that he's not, and he's just not letting anybody else in? And Kate and Sayid, by virtue of them being here, are starting to like discover it ultimately. But yeah. And so that's everything going on that side of the island. And then we have the actual like main subplot, which is the Claire, Charlie, Desmond bit, where again, that one's also going back and forth. And there's a lot of different stuff that's being revealed there. Again, all this stuff of like, what's interesting too is how like Claire's backstory doesn't necessarily reflect on her main story. In fact, if anything, I feel like it's almost more so echoed to her by Sun when she comes up with this plan, and Jin and Sun decide to help her, where again, they're going to set up these, they're going to set up these shells and set up a net so that they can capture a seagull. And then Sun is telling her the story about, her mom, how, it's like, it's pretty funny because my mom was always worried that this would happen to me, me marrying a fisherman and ultimately marrying someone like below my class. The irony being that she never did a day's work in her life. So that's pretty fun. And then Desmond fires off the rifle, to scare the boar away, even though everybody, including Claire, is immediately able to figure out you're lying your ass off. What aren't you telling us? She tries to get the answer to Charlie. Boar. Yeah. Charlie won't. Charlie is remaining dumb, and Charlie seems to have gone back to like his doom and gloom thing from Desmond telling him originally, being like, it's like, I'm gonna die, so what the hell was the point of trying it for anything? But we know that they're coming at it from different points. Desmond is trying to once again avoid another doomsday scenario for Charlie, and Charlie, knowing that inevitably, no matter what Desmond does, he is going to die, is wanting to spend every last waking minute with Claire. So you got all of that kind of cobbled together, working in conjunction. And it is quite interesting how Claire is like the next one to kind of be brought in on the conspiracy, because right now, I think it's still just Charlie and Desmond, because I don't remember if Hurley was there. Was Hurley there when Desmond basically told him, or that was more so like an intimate, like one-on-one moment with him and Charlie?
I think Hurley's seen enough that he's kind of
right.
He kind of gets it, like what more or less what's happening. Maybe not the full Charlie's gonna die thing, but the future scene thing. I think that's where that is at. Right.
Okay. So that makes sense then. But yeah, so then Claire basically ends up following Desmond all the way to this one side of the island after seeing him and Charlie argue, and she sees him ultimately capturing a seagull, realizing that he was trying to help, just in the means of, it's like, it's like Charlie was going to come up here in order to try and catch the seagull for you, and that's where he was going to slip and fall and get his head battered on the rocks, essentially. So continuing once again to basically act as Charlie's savior, and then once again allows for another like kind of sweet little reunion moment for him and Claire as they write the message into and put it into the seagull. Now, whether anybody actually catches it, that's a different story, because I will say that there is there is something that shows up in the last couple of episodes of this season that once again throws another loop in the trajectory of the show. And
we're still waiting for those dudes in Antarctica to.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. What the hell
something.
happened with those dudes in Antarctica? But like I said, this episode gave you a lot, and it was a lot more than I remembered it initially giving us. And like I said, and most of it did come from Mikhail, because Mikhail, again, he was saying, some of the things that he was saying at the Flame Station were true, even though again, he was blatantly lying about being a member of DHARMA but like a lot of the things that he was saying outside of his own affiliations now when he came to the island were true. Because basically he's saying that like, oh, we were able to previously go back and forth, but the underwater beacon was damaged previously when the EMP wave went off. And immediately they're looking at Locke being like, oh, gee, wonder what that could have been. So I thought that was pretty funny. And then also it's a thing of where it's like, I misspoke. What I meant to say was if you left the island, you wouldn't be able to come back, which also not necessarily true, because what's interesting here, and again, at the risk of spoiling anything that does happen going forward, while Mikhail says that, oh, your names are not on the list, that may not be the only list that's available. That may be the only list that he's been privy to, just because there's one set of lists doesn't mean that there aren't more that come later on. Like I said, I'm really doing my best in order to like sprinkle it in without like basically like spoiling all the lore, because again, the joy of you learning more throughout the run of the show is part of the show's charm ultimately.
Yeah, if I've learned one thing about Lost is that there's certain objects that will drive the main plots of each season. Like even last season it was the hatch and the computer. This season I guess the list is gonna be a more prominent thing going forward. So yeah, that's what I've learned about like story.
What's funny
it's just, like,
is
assign objects and you can use that as some kind of story fuel.
Yeah. What's funny is, as far as the specific list goes, the list is just kind of like a story item that just drives this season forward, and then it kind of goes away for a bit, and then it doesn't come back until the final season. But I get what you're saying in terms of like, yes, there is always kind of like a device that's kind of pushing the season. But what's interesting about season 3 is I think season 3 is the only season really where that device in person is like actual physical altercations. And like I said, what was interesting is the fact that as much of a threat as the others were, how much kind of, for lack of a better word, these side quests that all kind of revolved around the initial conflict with the others are what kind of drove season 3 primarily, where again, you spent the whole first half of the season with like, Jack, Kate, and Sawyer being held by the others, and then everybody else kind of trying to pick up the pieces after the explosion in the hatch. And then you started to build and, progress more further along. And eventually, and now we're on kind of like the part 2 of the season where now the one quest is to get Jack back. And the other quest is how do we stop Charlie from dying with all these visions that Desmond is having? And it's going to be really interesting to see once all those storylines coalesce, especially after next week's season when we get another gigantic plot reveal with the man from Tallahassee, which is like one of the biggest plot reveals yet that we have. Once again, connecting 2 other characters in the show that you did not think, because we've got the Jack and Claire connection. We have the, what else was there? There was like one other. We have the Jack and Claire connection, and then there's another connection that's going to happen between 2 other characters that is just absolutely bananas in terms of like, oh, there's no way that these 2 characters would possibly be connected. And then when you find out, you're like, oh, shit. Okay, did not see that one coming. So that's
if I've learned another thing about Lost is to expect the unexpected connections.
The unexpected, exactly,
yeah. Exactly. Which is one of the harder things to do with anything. So.
Yeah. So in hindsight, in conclusion, what I can say is that while this episode is not one of the best episodes, I still like kind of the last couple of, like I said, flashes, not in Portland, flashes before your eyes, Trisha Tanaka is dead, and enter 7-7. With the exception of Stranger in a Strange Land, we can just cut that episode out and pretend like it never existed. We can... That stretch has been like so like really, really good. And while this is like another great installment in that stretch, while it's not one of my favorite episodes, it is a very, very important episode plot progression wise. So that's kind of what I'll say about it in conclusion.
Yeah, like maybe the episodes don't stand out like individually as much as for me. They're like, okay, we're in this arc now. Either way, it's a very good progression of that arc. And I think with TV, it's just like, yeah, if you can keep the momentum going, you're good, and then build to the finale where all the plots intersect, and that's where the magic happens, as we've seen with Lost already twice. So they're pretty good at their finales.
That they are. So real quick, before we get out of here, who do you think the two characters are that you're going to find out are connected in next week's episode?
This is very out there.
I know.
I think it's a Locke flashback.
Yep, that's
right?
a Locke. The next Locke flashback.
So Locke is one, and then who else is on the island? Maybe other. Maybe I don't know.
TBD. Well, like I said, because we know that Locke is clearly on a mission on his own. Once again, that he's not telling anybody. So,
he already talked to Ben a bunch. Maybe it's what's her name? The blonde girl.
Claire.
The others.
No. Juliet.
Yeah, sure. Let's just go with that.
Yeah. Juliet.
I don't know.
All right. We'll keep it at that. We will keep it at that, and we will tune in next week for The Man from Tallahassee, our official kind of semi-last October episode.
No, but she already had a flashback, like, quite recently. I don't know. I can't predict.
Man, have I finally stumped Luke? Tune in next week in order to find out. In the meantime, Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. We'll try and get the Thing video out by Halloween, but I make no promises. November, definitely.
Yes. Definitely. And of course, you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. Oh, man. The short film is shot, people. It is in the process of being edited. So in this case, we're just going to say 12 seasons and get lost. We'll see you guys next time.